She heads home. School days are sometimes too much to bear. The night sky belongs to someone else and seems too far to reach. The laughters echo throughout the class, pierce through her chest, and stay there for an eternity. And they're too much to handle. She loses her rule of the day. But it isn't the reason for all of this. Karah wonders when she reaches out for the top of the bookshelf at the end of the room. Stretching the right arm feels good enough to pull her back to reality. How can I make sense of all of this nonsense? Amidst the hazy thoughts, she sees Jimmy. He must miss her. He must be sleeping right now, only to pass through the hours without Karah. Amidst the hazy thoughts, no one sees her. She murmurs. Karah's home right now, at the minute I'm telling you the story. Mom cooks burgers and mash, the savory sausage, the mashed potatoes, the flavor-packed onion gravy seep into her tongue and stay there. She finishes off with cabbage rolls, the tender perfection swirls around the previous flavors, eventually pulling them down her throat. Mom is a good cook. That's all she knows. She goes upstairs, lies down, and caresses Jimmy on the chest. At first, he doesn't want to be like that. Karah has to violently clasp him to her bosom, as if signaling the day is not a bad day. So, just stay here with me. The red line of her answering machine tells her that messages to respond to. The sweltering afternoon reminds her of the need to take a shower. The softness below her back prompts her to think about how good, untroubled her life has been. Good food, unconditional family love, proper education. Yeah, all good. Still, the emptiness inside eats into her body to the point where it renders life nothing but meaningless. She opens her favorite book. Favorite means relevant and soothing. And it reads, God, but life is loneliness. Despite all the opiates, despite the shrill, tinsy gaiety of parties with no purpose, despite the false grinning faces we all wear, and when at last you find someone to whom you feel you can pour out your soul, you stop in shock at the words you utter. They are so rusty, so ugly, so meaningless and feeble from being kept in a small, cramped, dark inside you so long. Yes, there is joy, fulfillment, and companionship, but the loneliness of a soul and its appalling self-consciousness is horrible and overpowering. Sylvia Plath. It may be good now. Karah's not the only one to suffer in this vast universe. Sylvia Plath, a giant in the field of literature, also suffers greatly. There's no reason to make a big thing out of this teenage nonsense, as people usually say. But deep down, she feels something utterly and fundamentally wrong. Plath doesn't come to rescue her anyways. And that's the thing. The general picture. According to WHO 2021, depression is a common illness worldwide, with an estimated 3.8% of the population affected, including 5% among adults and 5.7% among adults older than 60 years old. Approximately 280 million people in the world have depression. Depression is different from usual mood fluctuations and short-lived emotional responses to challenges in everyday life. Especially when recurrent and with moderate or severe intensity, depression may become a serious health condition. It can cause the affected person to suffer greatly and function poorly at work, at school, and in the family. At its worst, depression can lead to suicide. Over 700,000 people die due to suicide every year. And suicide is the fourth leading cause of death in 15 to 29-year-olds. In today's episode, we're going to listen to and follow Karah, a 17-year-old high school student struggling with depression and anxiety, and learning as much as possible about the formidable mental illness called depression. We do not guarantee the level of effectiveness of any solution mentioned in the video. And thanks to Lost Connection, uncovering the real causes of depression and the unexpected solutions written by world-renowned journalist Johann, we can collect some extremely useful pieces of knowledge which can be of great use to anyone who has suffered from depression. Quick warning, this video may be distressing to some people, so viewer discretion is highly recommended. This is a slide series. I'm Lynn Normandis, your host. Welcome to our 8th episode, The Invisible Illness of Depression, an Uphill Battle. A quick thank you to our podcast producers for making this series possible and your unflagging support for the Slide series. If you want to continue to watch high-quality episodes like this, please do not hesitate to shout us with likes and comments and subscribe to our channels. You can now follow us on YouTube and Anchor for more interesting videos. Best regards, Lynn Normandis. Symptoms and patterns. During a depressive episode, the person experiences a depressed mood, feeling sad, irritable, empty, or a loss of pleasure or interest in activities. For most of the day, nearly every day for at least 2 weeks. Several other symptoms are also present, which may include poor concentration, feelings of excessive guilt or low self-worth, hopelessness about the future, thoughts about dying or suicide, disrupted sleep, changes in appetite or weight, and feeling especially tired or low in energy. In some cultural contexts, some people may express their mood changes more readily in the form of bodily symptoms like pain, fatigue, or weakness. Yet, these physical symptoms are not due to another medical condition. During a depressive episode, the person experiences significant difficulty in personal, family, social, educational, occupational, and/or other important areas of functioning. A depressive episode can be categorized as mild, moderate, or severe depending on the number or severity of symptoms, as well as the impacts on the individual's functioning. There are different patterns of mood disorders, including 1. Single episode depressive disorder, meaning the person's first and only episode. 2. Recurrent depressive disorder, meaning the person has a history of at least 2 depressive episodes. And 3. Bipolar disorder, meaning that depressive episodes alternate with periods of manic symptoms, which include euphoria or irritability, increased activity or energy, and other symptoms such as increased talkativeness, racing thoughts, increased self-esteem, decreased need for sleep, distractibility, and impulsive reckless behavior. The real causes and the unexpected solutions. I was originally recommended a book called Lost Connections, uncovering the real causes of depression and the unexpected solutions through a member in my reading club. I was stuck for quite a long time with the idea that depression stemmed from the chemical imbalance in our complicated brain, because I wonder if depression is really caused by this. How am I supposed to fix my brain and lead a healthier life? I ain't trying to break down my brain into smaller parts and examine them under laboratory lighting, that's for sure. I was thrilled by this scenario, to be honest, and I think everyone was. Henry's book is nothing from what I expected, and indeed it feels strange to immerse yourself in it if you give it a try. Now, without further ado, let's see what we have on the table right now. The real causes of depression. There are biological factors that can make it worse, but the real causes of depression and anxiety are in the way we are living today, Henry says. Depression is a response to things going wrong in our lives and our environment. Henry himself had personal experience with depression since he was a teenager. Here is his account. I was a teenager when I swallowed my first antidepressant. I was standing in the weak English sunshine outside pharmacy in a shopping center in London. The tablet was white and small, and as I swallowed, I felt like a chemical kiss. The morning I had gone to see my doctor and I had told him, crouched and embarrassed, the pain was leaking out of me uncontrollably, like a bad smell, and I had felt this way for several years. In reply, he told me a story. There is a chemical called serotonin that makes people feel good, he said, and some people are naturally lacking it in their brains. You are clearly one of those people. There are now, thankfully, new drugs that will restore your serotonin level to that of a normal person. Take them, and you will be well. At last, I understood what had been happening to me and why. However, a few months into my drugging, something odd happened. The pain started to seep through again. Before long, I felt as bad as I had at the start. I went back to my doctor, and he told me that I was clearly on too low a dose. And so 20 milligrams became 30 milligrams. The white pill became blue. I felt better for several months, and then the pain came back through once more. My dose kept being jacked up until it was on 80 milligrams. where it stayed for many years with only a few short breaks, and still the pain broke back through. So what was wrong with the drugs that Harry took and the drugs that a vast majority of us trusted? Seems like the answer we never stop looking for doesn't lie in the pills we take every day. So where is the answer to all this mess? Disconnection from meaningful work. Derealization is a common symptom of depression, where you feel like nothing you are doing is authentic or real, and it is close connection to our working lives. Studies have shown that within the same organization, high-level jobs with more autonomy and control over outcomes are correlated with lower levels of depression and high levels of social activity. In other words, those in lower-level jobs with less autonomy tend to be so exhausted by the deadening effects of their work that they spend less time socializing. Those with the least control and authority in the workplace are the most likely to have depression. We need to feel like what we do has meaning. Disconnection from other people. Loneliness and no sense of belonging are big indicators of depression. Over the last 50 years, this problem has only gotten worse. The Western world has experienced what Harry calls a social crash, with people spending less time together than ever before in history. One of the key challenges here is that this loneliness can cause a snowball effect as disconnection spirals into more disconnection. Disconnection from meaningful values. Our consume-driven society has left us detached from worthwhile values, which in turn contributes to depression. Materialistic values also strongly correlate with overall worse experiences of life. Studies show that achieving extrinsic goals like a job promotion, a bigger house, etc., has no lasting effect on depression. Conversely, intrinsic goal attainment does. Our problem in countering this value system is that the world promotes extrinsic motivators at the expense of intrinsic goals, a problem Harry labels as junk values. And that's why he says materialism is KFC for the soul. Adverts, TV, news, and social media all tend to promote the notion that an extrinsic value system will make you happier than an intrinsic value system. Disconnection from childhood trauma. The adverse childhood experiences, also known as ACE, study carried out in 1998, found the more traumatic a person's childhood is, the more likely they are to have depression and anxiety. Disconnection from status and respect. In areas with larger gaps in wealth, such as the US, there are higher rates in depression. Robert Sapolsky conducted seminal work on the study of status in baboons. One of the conclusions was that baboons are most stressed as measured by cortisol levels and some other indicators when status is threatened and status is low. Humans exhibit the same physiological changes when depressed. The psychologist Paul Gilbert argues that this is a kind of submission response. The idea that status anxiety causes depression has some support in the socio-demographic data and economic data too. Studies have found that the higher the inequality, the higher the depression and anxiety in countries. Of course, controlling for other causative factors here is tricky. Disconnection from the natural world. A 2018 study called Association of Neighborhood Greenness with Self-Perceived Stress, Depression, and Anxiety Symptoms in older U.S. adults found out that people who live in greener neighborhoods feel less stress and despair than those who don't. There is a strong association between living in green areas and lower depression levels. Even when accounting for other potential causes, nature seems remarkably correlated with levels of reported well-being and mental health. One idea propagated by E.O. Wilson is called biophilia, an innate love of nature that all humans have. The positive effects are simply a result of restoring this natural balance. Being out in nature also gets us away from our ego, inducing a feeling of awe. The grandness of the world can put our individual problems in some perspective. Disconnection from a hopeful and secure future. Native Americans on government-controlled reservations had staggeringly high suicide rates. In reservations where they had control of their own laws, elections, police, and schools, this was not a problem. They had control over their destiny and were less likely to commit suicide. The real role of genes and brain changes. We do know that there is a genetic influence in depression, though it only accounts for 37% of cases. Neuroplasticity is how the brain changes from experience. Because of this, when people spend more time with thoughts of despair rather than joy, it can strengthen the negative feeling areas. So what are some of the unexpected solutions of depression that we, this last series, can bring to you guys today? Note that the following solutions come from the writer journalist Johann, and we would love to convey them to you guys in our own words. The unexpected solutions of depression. We act like human distress can be assessed solely on a checklist that can be separated from our own lives and labeled as brain diseases. If we started to take people's actual lives into account when we treat depression and anxiety, Johann explained it could require an entire system overhaul. Social prescriptions are a great way to help people with depression by making them feel valued and connected. The solution for depression that Harry comes up with is a social prescription. Rather than turning to medication, doctors are starting to realize the value of social prescriptions. They help people reconnect with others around them, have meaningful work, meaningful values, and give a chance for people to overcome trauma from their past. In effect, social prescriptions reconnect the lost connections. Harry gives an example of a social prescription given to a nurse who was bullied at work and depressed. The social prescription her doctor gave was to work on a project with a small group of similarly disconnected people. The task involved turning an abandoned area in London into a garden. The people united and were able to share past traumas and things they had in common. They could reconnect with nature and identify meaningful work that meant something to the neighborhood. All of this improved her mental health. She was able to stop her medication and start her own gardening center. While some may say the notion that depression isn't a chemical imbalance pretty radical, Harry makes it very convincing. We know that antidepressants don't work for a lot of people, so looking for other ways to help people with depression is essential. Lost Connections has some great suggestions for how people can reconnect and discover meaning to deal with depression. Overall, we need to reconnect to what has been lost, our sense of self, our world, and our values. Karah, where is she? Can we give her a helping hand at the very least to soothe her? Karah closes the book and puts it back on the shelf. She lets go of the dog, takes a deep breath, and looks at herself in the mirror. Sylvia Plath doesn't come, but still tomorrow will be another day. Not necessarily better, but all of this nonsense will vanish, right? Jimmy, am I right? Hey, come here. Let me calm you. Come here. Aren't you hearing me? Oh yeah, attaboy.